Okay, everybody, we're back with, you know, our life. Um, Still talking to Cove, but not Derek yet, but at least we met Derek. And I noticed in the last episode in the beginning, I said Dexter. I was thinking of Baxter because the creators are also making a Baxter DLC that will probably come out next year. I don't know when. So, yeah, my bad about that. But anyways, let's get into it. Cove perked up at your response, a smile appearing on his face. He immediately took a seat on your bed, not afraid to get comfortable in your room. Ooh, you felt a little better at the sight, somehow. You still had a lot of worries, but you were glad he was here. And not just tonight, you were glad he came into your life in the first place. That was a change you'd never want to undo. Who would have thought Cove would mean so much to you? You certainly hadn't in the beginning. You had kept your distance, and so had he. Now you considered him to be one of your closest friends. You joined Cove on your bed, taking a seat across from him. He smiled at you again, but you could tell this time it was a half-hearted smile. He was still easy to read. Though he didn't want to talk about his mom and dad, he must be thinking about what happened and what's about to happen. What do we want to say? Do you want to say we smiled gently at him, we put our hand on his shoulder, we patted his back, we hugged him, you took his hand in yours, you nudged him with your foot. Um, let's um, let's take his hand in ours. Let's be supportive. You reached out and gently held his hand. It wasn't much, but you'd hoped the contact helped even a little. Cove blinked, startled before his expression softened into something more natural. Conversation was stilled, stilted, and broken, often by silence at first. Then both of you were able to get into your usual candor. As your secret hangout session stretched on, you thought that you truly wanted to keep having moments like this with him. You hoped the day would never come when life decided that the two of you would have to part ways, and you knew Cove felt the same. You opened your tired eyes, groaning as they adjusted to the bright light that was streaming through your window and warming your tanned skin. With a loud yawn, you rolled away from the sunlight and blinked a couple of times. The sleep from your eyes before realizing with a start that it was actually morning. You couldn't remember even falling asleep. Cove had crept through your window during the night, and the two of you spent time together, trying not to wake your parents. You must have fallen asleep while you were hanging out, but couldn't put a finger on exactly when. You wondered how late Cove had stayed before you headed home. You rubbed your face and yawned again, contemplating whether you should get out of bed and get ready for the day, or stay snuggled up for a little while longer. Until your gaze landed on an instantly recognizable mop of pale green hair, you bolted upright and gasped in surprise. He never left. He was still there, in the morning. You froze, you jumped out of bed, you laughed out loud. Cove. Let's freeze. Your muscles refused to move an inch and your eyes widened as you stared at Cove's sleeping form in absolute shock. If your moms found out he had slept there the entire night, you both would be in big, big trouble, I bet. The fuck? Realizing quickly that you need to get Cove out of here before your moms or Elizabeth walked into your room, that's why we need a lock. You willed your body to get a move on and swung your legs over the side of the bed. You whisper in his ear, "Hey little mama, let me whisper in your ear." I'm so sorry. You shook his shoulder, you poked him in the face, you tugged his hair, you threw a pillow. Let's whisper in his ear, let's be a creep. Cove, wake up. Oh, I hate whispering. You whispered his name softly but urgently, and his eyes snapped open as he woke up with a start. You scrambled out of the way as he abruptly jumped to his feet before almost losing his balance and falling back down. He recovered just as quickly and faced you indignantly. What was that for? Shh. What? The situation dawned on him too before he even finished the word. Cove blinked at you a couple of times, his eyes growing in panic as some thought that only he could hear settled in his mind. Oh my god, I fell asleep. You weren't exactly sure what to do as you watched Cove pace around your room, looking around frantically. Cove stopped mid-step, and you wanted to ask what he had been searching for, but you guessed he wouldn't know the answer to that himself. Despite that, he hadn't calmed down completely. The atmosphere was still frazzled. It's going to be alright, we're going to be in so much troubles, just calm down, settle down before my moms hear you. Didn't say anything. Let's just say it's going to be alright. You just need to leave before anyone notices you're still here. If they knew, they would have heard about it already. Cove nodded. His shoulders tensed as he fixed you with a firm stare with his turquoise eyes. Letting out a heavy sigh, he ran a hand through his hair in exasperation. He couldn't look at you again as he spoke. I'll see you later. You were confused by how all this played out, but hoped that was true. Right, bye, Cove. At that, you were suddenly wrapped up in a tense embrace. As panicked as he was, this seemed to be something he couldn't forget before leaving. Aw, thanks again. You're a good friend, Nori. He firmly whispered the words into the top of your shoulder. But you were let go before he had a chance to respond or even fully react. In a matter of seconds, he had climbed over your bed and opened the window. A cool breeze rolled off the ocean, fluttering through Cove's hair and filling your room with a salty scent. Cove fearlessly stepped out into the ledge. You urged him to hurry. You suggested to sneak out the door. You rallied him up. You wished him luck. Good luck, and be super careful. You weren't sure if he had heard you or not, but he kept going along, one foot in front of the other, with increasing speed until his form disappeared out of sight. You stuck your head out the window as far as it could go to try to keep watching. He walked the full length of ledge before jumping down to the top of the garage, then lowering himself onto the fence. From there, he finally dropped down to the ground. You threw out a thumbs up at his successful climb. He ran off toward his house without stopping, disappearing behind the side of another building. You had to admit, you were pretty impressed at how doable he made that look. With a little sigh, you reclosed your window, deciding there was nothing more you could do. You hopped off your bed and got ready to head downstairs for the day. Do we want to put our slippers on, check the mirror, make our bed, or just leave? Let's check the mirror first. You certainly look like you had just woken up with your black hair sticking up all over the place. Taking a comb from the bedside table, you attempted to fix and smooth down some of the messy strands. You took the stairs, slowly attempting to mask your face into a look of innocence. You were sure that someone would have come in your room if they had heard anything strange, but you couldn't be too careful. You had to play it cool. When you stepped into the living room, Elizabeth was there, tapping her finger on the counter. Good morning, Elizabeth. She looked you over immediately, her eyes squinting at the greeting. Why are you being so weird? You hadn't even done anything. Your big sister never missed a beat, unfortunately. You turned and offered a tight smile, and her lips pursed together even tighter. Nori. You folded. You excitedly blurted out, sorry. Wouldn't you like to know? You clammed up. You shrugged it off. Let's just shrug it off. I don't like Elizabeth at all. I'm not. You spoke so nonchalantly, you almost thought she believed you. But you knew better. Further suspicious squinting occurred as she waited for something, but ultimately she rolled her eyes as you weren't sure if you were in trouble or not. She didn't seem to care enough to dig any further. Whatever. And then she walked straight out the front door, letting it slam shut behind her, and you let out a brief sigh. Elizabeth went out most days to hang out with her friends from school around town. Today you were extra glad for it, though you were also grateful she hadn't left the house any sooner and risked running into Cove. It looked like you were getting away with that. Breakfast was eaten in peace and alone. Your moms were both out by the time you had gotten up. They had left you a serving of food from breakfast they made. Hash browns and an omelet with a fruit salad, and there were a few sausage links. What do we want to do? Do we want to take a little bit of everything? We passed on some parts because they weren't things you liked. We passed on some parts because you were trying to avoid meat. Or you passed on some parts because you were trying to avoid, let's just pass on some. I'm just going to answer like how I would do in real life. I'm going to pass on some parts because there's just some things I don't like. You appreciated that there was a variety in your meals your mom's made. The parts you did have were tasty. The day lazily drifted by at home, and eventually your parents returned. You pulled open the fridge again, lingering in the frosty air for a moment or two before grabbing a bottle of ice-cold water and taking a long drink. It was a perfect, balmy summer afternoon, and you had decided to head outdoors and find something to do. You hadn't decided what something was just yet, but you were sure something would pop up to occupy your time. As you were heading out the front door, you paused for a moment. You hadn't seen Cove since he left that morning. You couldn't help but think about what happened to him. Would it be so bad to go over to his house right now, or to call him to check in? You stepped out your house, still stuck in an internal debate with yourself, when a voice caught your attention. Hi, Nori. Confused, you looked over to where an unrecognizable woman was waving at you, a friendly smile plastered on her face. You racked your memory for a while, where you might have seen her before, but nothing came to mind. Not your school or from the country club your moms took you to. You had absolutely no idea who this woman was. The woman crossed the road towards you, and you were a little unsure whether you should stay put or go back in the house and lock the door. Oops, I'm sorry. Was that presumptuous? I've heard about you, but have no idea who I am. Do you? You shook your head and she removed her sunglasses to reveal sparkly ocean blue eyes. All of a sudden, she seemed a little more familiar. My son lives here, and my ex too. With a bent smile, she lifted a hand to point to the condo across the street from your own house. She was Cove's mom. You didn't know why you hadn't realized sooner. Now that you've gotten a look at her, she seemed nice, she seemed sort of strange, she looked really young. It made sense that she was Cove's mom. She felt so different to Cove, she was super pretty. It made sense that she was Cove's mom. They had the same eyes and other physical traits in common. No matter your thoughts of her, you still felt taken aback that she had appeared here so suddenly. Cove mentioned she was coming, but you hadn't gotten the impression it would be the very next day. She extended a hand again, this time for you to take. You studied the manicured fingers in front of your face and the assortment of bracelets that dangled from her wrist. I'm Kyra Priest. You can call me Kyra. You shook her hand, you didn't shake her. Let's shake her hand, let's not be hostile. You reached out and took her hand, and she shook yours firmly, grinning wide. I'm Nori, but you already knew that. Cove's mentioned you to me before. It's nice to officially meet you, Nori. Cove talked to you about his mom. He hadn't mentioned how he said things about you to her. What has Cove said about me? What are you doing here? Nice to meet you too. You kept quiet. Oh, this is nice to meet you too. She smiled at you fondly, her eyes crinkling at the corners. The sound of a door opening and closing caught both of your attentions, and when you turned towards the sound, it was to find Cove exiting his house, his eyes skimming the ground. Considering just how tall he had grown, you kind of figured his mom also would have been tall, but she was much more on the short side for an adult anyway. Cove's height must have come from his father. There you are. I thought you were going to keep me standing out here all day. You tried to catch Cove's eyes as he walked towards you, but his gaze was finally fixed on the sidewalk. When he finally crossed the road and looked up, he gave you a pitiful look. After the way he acted last night, you knew he must be feeling pretty mixed up about this. You tried to wordlessly express that you understood. Cove and I are heading into town to grab something to eat while the snore is at work. Kyra beamed at Cove and ruffled his hair, which only seemed to upset him more. You assumed the snorer she was talking about was Mr. Holden. Hey, you should come with us, Nori. I'd love to get to know you better. Yeah, you should come. There was a pleading in his tone that you couldn't miss. Of course we'll run it by your parents first. Responsibility and all that. It'll give me an excuse to meet them, which I need to do that at some point. It's important to be neighborly if I'm going to be roosting on the street for the time being. Any hoosies, let's go. Kyra walked ahead towards your house, and you hung back with Cove, who crinkled his nose as he watched her. I'm sorry about her, but I really do want you to come. I don't want it to just be the two of us. Not right now. You leaned in closer and whispered while checking around for anyone who might hear. What happened? Did your dad know you were gone? Cove shook his head and sighed heavily. Dad was so focused on Mom showing up that he didn't even notice. I thought when I heard them on the phone last night that it was something they were planning for the future. This morning Dad said it was supposed to be a surprise, and I guess I was surprised. She's going to be here all summer. Oh. You were surprised to hear that too. Cove sighed again, even heavier. I'll go with you if you really want me to. He smiled, his shoulders relaxing a little in relief. Thanks, that'd be cool. The two of you headed over to where Cove's mom had just knocked on your front door and stood behind her. Mom answered the door after a minute, her eyebrows lifted in surprise at the group she found in front of her. You realized that, like you, she would have no idea that it was Cove's mom who was hanging with you. However, after blinking at the woman a couple of times and looking between her and Cove, the realization seemed to strike on her. Hello there, I'm Pamela. I see you've met my kid Nori, and I'm guessing you've already known Cove for a while. Kyra laughed, and you and Cove exchanged looks as your parents' weird sense of humor. I'm Kyra Priest, Cove's mom. It's so nice to meet you. A head of purple-brown hair caught your eye as Ma popped behind Mom, squeezing herself in beside her. We have company. I was wondering what all the commotion was. She grinned excitedly at Kyra. The two of them introduced themselves and shook hands. Hi, Nori. Cove. Cove smiled at Ma shyly, and she gestured a hand towards the living room. There's no use of hanging around in the doorway. Why don't you come in? I'd love to, but I promised to take my son out to eat, and I wouldn't want to hold you up with a surprise visit. Cove grimaced. He likely took offense at how she didn't want to put them out with a surprise visit, but not him apparently. Oh, I understand. You're welcome to stop by anytime. I'll take you up on the offer when I can. Count on it. Would you mind too much if Nori went with Cove and I? My treat. We won't be driving, just a quick walk down the road. Sure, that sounds nice. I hope you all have fun. You gave your moms a look, and they smiled at you fondly. You were happy they were letting you go. You were annoyed. They agreed just like that. Let's be annoyed. You had already assured Cove you would go along, but it would have been nice for your mom to ask you too. Even if you had shown up with them, you might not have wanted to go. Marvelous. Expect us back in an hour or two. We look forward to seeing you again. Take care. Your parents waved goodbye to the three of you as you backed up onto the street. There was the sound of the front door closing behind you. I'm pretty positive I saw some restaurants when I was in the taxi not too far from here. Yeah, it's a tourist town, isn't it? There's a lot of them around. It's kind of strange to see Cove give someone this much attitude. If he wasn't in the mood to be nice, he generally just kept to himself. Kyra put her hands on her hips and smiled at her son. Well, you sound like the area expert. Do you have any recommendations for a place nearby? Not really. Kyra pouted at him a little and turned to you and said, how about you, Nori? Want to point me to the right direction? Let's just nod. You've been to a lot of places in town, so you know a couple of good ones. There's a Chinese restaurant that me and my family go to all the time. It's my mom's favorite. There's also a tropical themed place that tries to be sort of fancy. Both sound like a great treat. I'll leave it to you to pick for us, since Cove is going through a phase over there. He huffed at her and turned his face away. Ooh, she's passive aggressive. The Chinese restaurant, the tropical themed place. You insist Cove's. I'm trying to remember what I picked last time. Let's do tropical. Thank you, Nori. Will you show us the way? You nodded, taking the lead of your little group as Cove and his mom followed behind you. Together, the three of you left the neighborhood behind. The walk was about 15 minutes, and along the way, Kyra asked a lot of questions about the area. Cove was quiet most of the time, so you ended up answering her instead. Kyra explained that she lived in a large city and she loved how peaceful and relaxing everything seemed in Sunset Bird. The restaurant was busy as usual, but luckily you were shown right to a small table. Kyra lowered herself into the chair while Cove picked the one diagonal to her, not facing her, or to her side. It was awkward. Let's see. To start, what would you all like to drink? I'll get an orange soda. Noted. Nori? Do we want coffee, juice, milk, soda, water? I'm gonna do water. Lemon or anything? There's a sugar on the table. No. Sure. Kyra placed the order for your drinks, getting a black hot coffee yourself, and it didn't take long before they were brought to the table and set in front of you. You took a long sip of your drink as you looked around the restaurant. Your small group checked over the menus, deciding what to order. The last time you came here, the dish you ordered was amazing. You wanted to order something different this time. Kyra and Cove didn't need any encouragement for this. They were totally focused on the information in front of them. Soon the meals too were ordered and the menus taken away. You glanced at the table surface, waiting to figure out what to say. Cove awkwardly sunk back further into his seat and crossed his arms, all while blatantly avoiding eye contact. The side wall must be real interesting to him right now. His sour feelings today were unignorable. Instead of asking more open questions he'd brush off, Kyra had mercy on her son and instead put her focus towards you. Nori, what's a few things that you're into? There's gotta be something you do for fun, especially now that you're not buried in school assignments. We're into art. We're into digitally creating. My computer at home doesn't really have all those programs I need. And drawing. I filled out a lot of sketchbooks. And games are fun. I like to play video games. I don't know much about them. Maybe you could show me sometime. And music. I like to listen to a lot of it. I have an MP3 player at home that my mom helped me put some music on, and I've seen some concerts. Awesome. And that's it. I'm happy to learn more about you. There's so much I hadn't heard. Cove leaves the detail out. So what exactly did Cove say about me? Kara laughed, holding a hand in front of her mouth. I can't tell you that. I didn't come all this way to embarrass my son too much. Kids are delicate at this age. She laughed again, and you glanced at Cove to see his reaction. He cringed, looking very much like he would rather be anywhere but here. Hoping it would clear some of the tension in the air, you decided to ask Kyra questions of your own. Cove hasn't told you much about her, and you were curious to know more about this woman who was such a big part of his life. What exactly do you do for work? I'm a travel writer for a magazine and things. I keep people in the loop on what's worth seeing. It's good work. Wow. What do you like to do? Where do you live normally? Are you in a new relationship now? What do you like to do? Spend time with my little boy, of course, and traveling. A real shock, huh? Where do you live normally? Nevada. Have you ever been there? You shook your head. It's a beautiful place. Check it out if you can. You can bring yourself to asking it. We're not asking those invasive ass questions. The fuck? It didn't seem to bother her that the conversation dropped off. Cove sipped his soda angrily, slurping up the remaining drink with furrowed brows. He looked ready to run straight out the restaurant. Sorry, y'all, my allergies. You weren't sure if coming along had ended up making lunch better or worse. You flicked his straw wrapper at him. You gave him a sympathetic look. You smiled at him. You gave him a sympathetic look. Cove eventually noticed you were watching him, and you gave him a look to let him know that you were there for him. It was subtle, but you swore you could see the hint of a smile tilting the corner of his lips. You two seem really cute together. Cove covered his face with his hands and leaned back in his seat. Mom, why would you say that? You just laughed. Thanks, we are cute. You blushed. You felt bothered too. Oh, let's just blush. The way she said that had embarrassed you. You weren't prepared to have Cove's own mother describe the normal interactions the two of you had as cute. Your meals were delivered shortly after that, and everything was so delicious even Cove enjoyed his food. Okay. Did I skip that? I probably did. My bad. Alright, now that we're all full and content, can you explain please why you had a bug up your butt all day? Cove's face instantly returned to a scrunched form. Seriously, baby, what did Mom do to make you this mad? I haven't even been around a full day yet. He gripped the edge of the table, refusing to make eye contact. The words he spoke were barely audible over the din of the restaurant. You could have told me. She leaned forward to not miss anything else, eyebrows raised. Told you what? He finally seemed to find his voice and spoke the thoughts that had been on his mind. That I wasn't going to visit you this year, that you were going to be coming instead. Didn't you invite me? You wanted me to be here with you? Cove's eyes began to shake and his frustration ebbed. I do want you to be around, but I didn't know it'd be like this. It's not the same, and nobody said anything. Her expression grew tense. She threaded her fingers together and placed her hands in front of her on the table. We've both been gifted another Clifford surprise. Referring to that as a Clifford surprise almost caught you and Cove to crack a smile. Almost caused both you and Cove to crack a smile. You also had no idea his name wasn't just Cliff. Over 5 years, nobody had ever called him Clifford until now. She smoothed her hair out and not letting go of her stern look. The more things change, the more they stay the same. They let out identical sighs but smiled weakly at one another afterwards. I can go home, Cove. We can still set up a normal trip to my place before the summer ends. Cove's lips tightly closed together. He seriously pondered the option. I think I do want you to stay. I miss it when you're not here. My heart! She reached across the gap, grabbed his face, and planted a kiss on his cheek. Cove tried to wiggle away. Mom, stop! Sorry, sweet young men need to be smooched by their parents. If I don't, they'll take away my mom license. Kyra was completely enthused by Cove's admission, though a tone of seriousness did return to her voice when the conversation continued. Do you want to talk to your dad too? No. Cove had snapped that word instantly, but reeled his annoyance back in just as quickly. Maybe later, not today. I understand, we can shelve it. Thanks, Mom. Thank you for talking to me, Mr. Little Mister. She grinned affectionately at him before turning her way. And thank you, Nori. Huh? What did I do? It's easy to act like a baby with your mom. It's harder to keep that up with your neighbor watching over everything. Especially when you really care about what said neighbor thinks of you. She winked. Mom? She just ruffled his hair with a laugh, then moved her hand down to tap the end of his nose. And that was how the issue was resolved, at least between Cove and his mom. When the three of you left the restaurant and Kyra had paid the bill, you walked back to your neighborhood slowly. You had eaten so much by that time you were beginning to feel sleepy. It didn't help that the lunch that happened late and the sun was already beginning to descend from the sky. But eventually you reached your street. Someone was there to greet your group upon arrival. Welcome back, family, and Nori too. Cliff. Dad. The two walked past him into the condo without sparing another word. Despite the summer heat, their shoulders were cold. Uh-oh, I'm in trouble. He rubbed the back of his neck with a crooked smile, but his eyes were soft as he looked on after them. He's so much like his mom, don't you think? You gave a vague nod, not sure what he was expecting you to do. He nodded back, far more energetically. Okay, have a nice night, Nori. You too, Mr. Holden. With that, Ko's dad disappeared to join the others inside. It was your turn to go home now. Summer hasn't started off at all how you imagined it would have, though it turned out to set the tone well. Having Kyra in the neighborhood was a new experience for not only you and Cove, but also both of your families, and a dull moment was rarely had. Alright. So that ends this episode. I'm glad we finished that off. Hopefully we get to see more of Derek, not Dexter, but Derek in the future soon. I'm gonna see if he's in these DLCs actually. So I will catch y'all later. Thanks.